Okay, part 3. I just switched calculators. To do the linear regression model here, we're going to hit, of course, turn the calculator on, hit the Stat button, and edit your tables. So you edit, you type all your data into column 1 for your X value or your independent variable. In column B, you type in your Y values or your dependent variable. We plug this number in to get this one. So do that, hit the Stat button, go over to Calculate, and we're looking for linear regression. Linear regression is 4 on here. We want list 1, list 2, and here where it says store regression equation, we're going to put it in our y equals thing. So we're going to hit the VARS button here. You guys can't see my buttons. We're going to hit the VARS button, and then it pops up this window. Arrow over to Y variables because we want it to go there. Hit enter for function, and we're going to put it in the first one. If you have several, you can do different graphs in different ones, but we'll just put it in the first one and hit calculate, enter a couple more times. It will give you the values. This A here is like your M for slope. So we write that equation here. I'm going to round to hundredths place. So the 2 is less than 5, so I stop at 4. The 0 is less than 5, so I'm going to stop at the 9 here. Now, the next question asks me what would happen after 8 minutes. I could just type 8 in here, negative 20 or 2,161.54 times 8 plus 28,437.19, and get that. But since I've already programmed it in the calculator, I am just going to hit second graph and look at 8 on my X table, and at 8 it's 11,145, and if you look down here, it's not rounded. The table is rounded, but you can read the exact number below. So 11,144.85 at 8 minutes. The next one asks me how long will it take the plane to land. We can plug in 0 in our equation here and calculate. We could look here. When this value goes down to 0, it's not going to be an exact amount. It's not going to be a whole number. So how do we figure out how to get there? I certainly can just take and set the equation equal to 0 and say 0 is equal to negative 2161.54 x plus 28,437.19. Subtract that from both sides. Divide by negative 2161.54. Another way to do it, though, since it's already in our calculator, is I can hit y equals, make my y2 equal to 0, because that's when you land, is when you're on the ground. Okay, enter. And then I want to know where those two cross. So if I graphed it, the numbers are big. I'm not going to see it probably, but actually there it is. So if I graph it and I want to find the 0, I want to know where the two equations intersect. So I hit the trace, second calculate, and I want the intersection. So 5, and it'll ask me the first curve, that's the one I put in earlier, and the second curve, y2 equals 0, enter, and it wants me to guess, so I'm going to move my cursor over to where that line hits the thing. The y equals 0 is just a horizontal line here on the x-axis. So there, intersection, whoops, I missed it. Second, calculate, intersect is 5. Enter, yes, my cursor's already there. So, the answer you get longhand if you calculate out is 13.15. I'm getting 13.155 here because it's more exact because I didn't round my values. So, x equal to 13.156 seconds to land. Or is that minutes? I'm sorry, that's minutes. Minutes, not seconds. Okay? Questions? Anybody following my graphing? Yes?
Whenever you hit the bar thing after that, I did not know that you were on the calculator.
Okay, all right. Let me walk through it slower. Okay? You hit the stat button and edit your table. Once you get your data correct, hit the stat button again. It's in there, it'll automatically save it. Okay, it's in there, and then you want to calculate. So you go right, want to calculate, and we're doing linear regression, that's number 4. Okay, this is where the variable thing comes in. You guys might want to stop and pay attention. Okay, you're using list 1 and list 2, so that you don't change, just enter. Frequency list, that's not something we're using now. Store the regression equation is what that abbreviation stands for. So where are we going to store it? Hit the variable key here, VARS, whoops. Hit the variable key here, enter. And when you do that, this menu pops up. Now, there's lots of different options, but the one we want, you have to go under Y variable. So you arrow right one, and it's a function. We want to store that function in our Y equals memory here. So you just hit Y vars and then on 1 for function, then hit enter, and you tell it which one. It'll pop up with a list. You can put it in any of these, but I'm going to put it in the first one. And see, it'll say Y1 here when you've got it done. And then enter to calculate it. This is the equation that is stored in my Y equals, or Y1 equals, okay? If you look here, you hit Y1, you see it's there. That's the number, that long number. You don't have to type it in. The calculator stores it for you. Okay, so it's not rounded here. If I go on over here, you can see there's my X, and then plus 28,437.1904761. So it's very exact. Okay, so I want to know when the plane lands, so I set my second equation equal to 0 because the altitude will be 0. I want to know when my Y equals 0. And then you graph those two. You may not see it on the screen. If you don't see it on the screen, you just hit zoom fit, which is zoom 0. You go down here, zoom 0, and you'll see the graph. Okay. Then, if you ever want to go back, you hit zoom standard or zoom square. Now we know it crosses the y-axis way over here. We want to know what that value is. It's so many minutes. So we hit second trace, which says calculate. The blue word there is calculate. And then down to 5 is intersection, right? Hopefully you've learned this last year and you remember it. If not, review, then just rewatch the video a few times and practice. Intersect. Now, this first thing it tells me is which equation do I want to know intersects, because you could pick 2 of 30 different equations, however how many your calculator will store. So this, the y1 is the first equation I put in, so I want that to say y1, and then you just hit enter. Y2 is the equation I added with the 0. I want to know what the 0 is, so you just hit enter there. Okay, and then it tells me to guess. When you guess, it just wants you to move this little dot that moves around on the screen over into where it's pretty close. You see, if you can see it flashing there, I hope, till it's pretty close to where the 2 lines cross. The closer you get it, the more exact your answer will be. Your calculator will round if you just leave it over here at 0. Okay, and it may not be as accurate. So the closer you get it, the better off you are. And hit enter, and this will tell you the intersection is at 13.155969, where x equals that value, y equals 0. Okay, now you don't have to do it with the calculator. I'm teaching you this method to make it simpler. You can always just plug in the number. 0 equals this equation. Subtract the 28,437.13 from both sides. We get this negative 28,437.19 equals negative 2,161.54x. Divide both sides by negative 2,161.54, and that gives you the 13.15 rounded. 13.16 actually is more accurate, but that's close enough. So it says about 13 minutes. But we could tell it was about 13 minutes also if we looked at our table here. If we looked at the table, this is the altitude. Remember, we started at like 28,000 at 0 up here. Oops. What did I do? Okay. Well, I cleared that table. I need to get my y1 value back. I don't know what, oh, I cleared that equation. So stat, calculate, linear regression, enter, y theirs. Now, if I look at my table, the altitude goes down each minute until it becomes negative. It becomes negative between 13 and 14. Does it become negative closer to 13 or closer to 14? This is a pretty steep slope, but it appears to be closer to 13, but when we did our calculation, we saw it's actually 13.15. So it can be a little misleading, but you know it's somewhere between 13 and 14. Is that logical? You're looking for the 0, which would be between these two numbers, and 13.15.